Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this podcast today. My name is Julie Haverly. I lead the integrated go-to-market team for renewable fuels at Chevron, and I'm happy to present this podcast in partnership with Cummins. Chevron has many lower carbon options for fuel, and today we're going to specifically explore the benefits of biodiesel and how this lower carbon fuel solution can help reduce life cycle emissions right now. Today, the world population has grown to nearly 8 billion people and is anticipated to reach 9 billion globally, increasing energy demand by 15% in the coming decades. And that means we're going to need all available fuel solutions to be able to meet the increased demand for affordable energy. And biodiesel is just one of those solutions. Today, more companies are focusing on environment and demonstrating scalable, lower carbon intensity business practices. And they're looking at how lower carbon fuel solutions can help their companies reach their life cycle carbon emissions targets, using them as a way to gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace as well. As the largest contributor to GHG emissions in the United States, commercial transportation is a critical player in this paradigm shift. As a result, we see logistics companies, shippers finding themselves in the spotlight and tasked with leading the way in GHG reductions. And that's why this is an exciting time for the role that biodiesel and various engine technologies play in helping fleets reach their targets. And I thought for our discussion today that there would be no better resources to provide insights about how fleets can reduce greenhouse gas emissions than to bring together two top experts in the industry. And one of our experts is Dave Slade from Chevron, who will provide a look at how renewable fuels help fleets lower their carbon targets. Dave, do you mind introducing yourself?
Not at all. Thank you, Julie, and hello, everyone. My name is Dave Slade. I'm Chief Technologist at Chevron Renewable Energy Group for the Renewable Fuels Division. I'm a chemical engineer by education, and I've been with this business unit for 17 years as we've brought new products to the market, biodiesel and renewable diesel. We've worked with our industry stakeholders, such as our friends at Cummins, ASTM, a standards organization, government agencies, and many others to help include and get these fuels out into the market and have successful use for them with our customers. It's been a very interesting 17 years, and I'm excited to talk about a few of the benefits of biodiesel today.
So our other expert that we have on the call today is Ivan Iazdi from Cummins, who will tell us about the benefits of using biodiesel in diesel engines and how Cummins is helping their customers meet their emissions targets.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having us today. I lead the strategy and business development for Cummins, and I've been working over the last few years with low carbon diesel solutions, and I'm glad to take part of this discussion. We've been with Cummins for about 11 years, and I'm glad to engage in this kind of discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Ivan and Dave. So let's get started with the questions. Dave, can you tell us more about Chevron and why supporting the transition to lower carbon intensity fuels is important?
Sure. Thank you, Julie. As you mentioned in the intro, at Chevron, we produce numerous options of lower carbon fuels that power our planet now, and we are expecting in the future, into the distant future, even for some liquid fuel options. We're positioned to provide a fuel of choice portfolio to our customers and partner with them on their lower carbon journey. And as part of that journey, we think that high quality biofuels or liquid fuels are really a critical piece in that to help lower carbon emissions and even in some cases to improve engine performance. So the Chevron lower carbon portfolio includes biodiesel, renewable diesel, natural gas, compressed natural gas that is, renewable natural gas, and hydrogen. We're also working on propane and renewable gasoline products. For this podcast, however, we'd just like to focus on biodiesel.
Hey, that's very interesting, Dave. And it's interesting to see how Cummins look into the benefit of biodiesel in our engines and the role that this fuel plays into the Destination Zero strategy of Cummins.
So Ivan, I'm glad that you brought up Destination Zero. I've heard a lot about Destination Zero strategy at Cummins. Would you mind sharing a little bit more with us about Destination Zero?
Sure. So Cummins introduced a number of different initiatives that are focused on the future of the decarbonization. And one of these key initiatives is called Destination Zero, and it's our strategy for reaching zero emissions. In the end, Julie, internal combustion engines or ICE technologies are an important transitory step for the trucking industry. Cummins will be launching our fuel agnostic engines in the coming years, and that will support our Destination Zero and deliver a product to help customers to get the job done. As part of the fuel agnostic platforms, we have continued focus on advanced diesel solutions, and each of these diesel engines benefit our acceleration to zero emissions by continuing to meet stringent emission regulations and providing a familiar technology for our customers. The reduction for emissions from these engines is only amplified with the use of biodiesel, which will be available on future platforms, and it's actually available with our on-highway products dating back to 2007. In the end, the decarbonization we're not seeing as a light switch event, and we need to take advantage of the opportunities that are available now. One of those opportunities that Cummins is leading is the use of biodiesel to have an immediate impact in our decarbonization.
That's really interesting, Ivan. And I know that biodiesel is an approved fuel option in Cummins diesel products, but it's really great to see even further commitment to renewable fuels for future Cummins products as well. So next, I'd like to ask Dave, what does this all mean exactly then for biodiesel use in diesel engines today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Julie. Biodiesel is actually commonly seen as having kind of a limited blend opportunity to play, but what we've been proving at RAG, in spite of what other folks may already believe, is that biodiesel can be blended at almost any level with both diesel and renewable diesel. This is something that is a new movement, and we're really grateful that Cummins is willing to go along with us on this and look into the possibility of getting more biodiesel out into the fleets today, because I think that people consider long-term options, but biodiesel is really the one option that's available today in quantities that haven't yet been exploited. So we consider 20% biodiesel in petroleum diesel, which is commonly known as B20, to be really sort of a maximum that people are comfortable with today. Cummins is already there in their products, which is great, but we're looking to find ways for folks in areas where biodiesel is available to use more than 20%. So we don't see 20% as a blend wall, like sometimes people talk about ethanol having a blend wall. We think this is really just a preferential limit based on historical fuel quality. And what's really been great in North America is we've seen the modern quality of biodiesel really surpass anything that could have been imagined back 15 years ago when I started and when some people started considering this 20% blend wall. So we don't see that as a limit. We just see that as a starting point, and we're hopeful we can get more biodiesel out there in the market over the next few years.
So Ivan, I'm assuming what Dave has said aligns with Cummins and is, biodiesel being available and a 20% blend being very broadly accepted.
Correct. And that's the common preference in terms of blends is the B20. And that applies to our past products, our present products, and even the future products that we haven't announced yet are going to be released that way. But this doesn't mean that we can continue to push the boundary on what is offered in the future, especially as the lower emission benefits are further utilized in the industry.
So speaking of lowering emissions, can you both dive a little deeper into the role that biodiesel plays in this?
Yep, I'll jump in right here, Julie. So I think that when we consider long-term options, people tend to be very focused on things like electrification. But bio-based diesels, biodiesel, and renewable diesel are available today, and particularly biodiesel. So this can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions right away. And these fuels are really easy to incorporate because they work in existing fueling infrastructure and in existing fleets, and generally without compromising performance. One of the examples to use for biodiesel is that sulfur is naturally very low in biodiesel, so it's an ultra-low sulfur diesel option. Renewable diesel is too. So when we talk about sulfur emissions, we're already reduced just by using these fuels that come into the market in very low sulfur levels. For fossil carbon emissions, which is really the greenhouse gas that most folks are worried about today, we can say for biodiesel, it can be up to 100% reduction compared to petroleum diesel. Now, there's a little wrinkle there because biodiesel does currently use methanol as one of the ingredients. And so when methanol from conventional sources is used, we're more in that 94 to 95%. fossil carbon reduction range. But over time, we're confident there's going to be renewable methanol out there in the marketplace that we can use, which would then get us up to 100% reduction. For tailpipe emissions, which is not climate change so much as air quality, immediate near-term air quality, hydrocarbon emissions from the engine with biodiesel use can be reduced by as much as 70%. Other combustion emissions, such as particulate matter, can also be reduced by 70% or even higher. Both of those depend on engine technology, duty cycle, type of operation, but generally you can consider up to 70% as a really safe maximum for both hydrocarbons and particulate matter reductions. And these are real reductions that we've measured in testing. Other papers have been published. California has tested all these fuels. So these are real, reliable emissions. And I think that this is something that also makes them exciting potentially from a performance standpoint. If you've got lower engine emissions, that can make other things easier on the emissions treatment systems on modern diesel engines.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave. So Ivan, what advantages is Cummins seeing in lower carbon fuel emissions with biodiesel?
Biodiesel is an important fuel type in the Cummins engine portfolio, right? Up to B20 blends, that's the standard approved for our fuel type that allows the customers to further reduce their emissions. This helps us today, right? Because Cummins has started approving the use of B20 in 2007 in our on-highway applications. And that means that, practically speaking, customers who have powered their vehicles with Cummins have an opportunity to immediately reduce the emissions by just changing the fuel that is using on those engines. That's the great thing about biodiesel, right? It's a biodiesel that is a drop in fuel up to B20, so there is no immediate investment that is needed. So it doesn't get much easier than that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and then, ultimately this all results then in lower GHG emissions then.
Yeah, right, Julie. And as Ivan mentioned, at whatever blend level customers are interested that is already supported, they can drop these in and begin using them today. They don't have to replace their equipment. They don't have to replace their infrastructure. And because of that, biodiesel and bio-based diesels are one of the easiest, most effective fuel options for reducing life cycle carbon emissions today. And that's really important when you think about incorporating into activities in the fleet. You don't have to spend capital now. You don't have to put in an entirely new energy distribution system. That's the way to make things happen without spending more money. And all those things that cost money also have carbon intensity associated with them. So when we think about biodiesel as being a lower carbon option that has lower engine out emissions than ULSD in general, it's important to know that. And it's important to know that if you're working toward a carbon reduction targets or you're hauling goods for customers with reduced emissions targets, that biodiesel could be your best option to accomplish that right away. And in some jurisdictions that have either carbon reduction policies, like the Low Carbon Fuel Standard in California or the Clean Fuels Program in Oregon, or jurisdictional air quality restrictions, biodiesel may end up being a requirement, or some kind of lower emissions option is going to be a requirement. So this can help fleets with their own operations and help their customers reduce the carbon intensity of their supply chain.
Thank you, Dave. So, Ivan, you talked a little bit about biodiesel blends being approved in Cummins products. Can you share a little bit more about how biodiesel is helping your customers lower carbon emissions?
Absolutely. So we are very focused on reducing emissions and the output of our diesel engines as we move forward. And biodiesel is a key lever in further supporting the reduction in emissions that our future engines will provide. But it's also a solution to reduce the engine emissions on products that we are currently in use. There are millions of engines only in US that are using our products. And as mentioned before, Cummins has approved the use of blends up to B20 in most of our products all the way back to 2007. That makes the biodiesel an excellent resource to improve fleet overall emissions output without having to make a major investment. It is what makes biodiesel a drop-in, and meaning that there are no upgrades needed to the vehicle or engine, and infrastructure is already in place to support this.
Dave, can you shed also a little bit of light on how biodiesel helps Chevron's customers reduce emissions?
Yeah, sure. When we talk about engine emissions, which will, for this section we'll think of as pollutants. Biodiesel is unique among liquid fuels, among diesel fuels, that it's actually an oxygenated fuel. And by that I mean there's oxygen in the fuel molecules themselves. And that gives us a unique advantage in reducing pollutants such as soot or particulate matter and hydrocarbons, because that oxygen in the fuel helps fuel burn more completely. So instead of losing energy and putting out pollutants in the form of soot or in form of hydrocarbon emissions, it gets burned more completely in the engine, in the cylinder, so we capture that extra value in terms of pollutant reduction and a little bit more fuel economy than would be predicted just based on the energy content in the fuel alone. The other pollutant that biodiesel helps with is carbon monoxide. Once again, more complete combustion means lower carbon monoxide. Things burn thoroughly all the way to CO2. And this is one of those things that doesn't show up in the tailpipe in a new technology diesel engine, because new technology diesel engines already have pollutant control equipment on the end, on the exhaust. But it still can help drivers with these new diesel engines, because fewer particulate matter particles that go to the diesel particulate filter. Theoretically, and in some cases, our customers have shown us information that proves that they should have fewer diesel particulate filter regenerations, for example, and those consume fuel. So that's one of those things where it's a benefit. Even if the engine has emissions control devices, we're still sending fewer pollutants to that system that has to remove them. So once again, to kind of note, biodiesel can reduce diesel engine emissions from a climate change standpoint up to about 100% for fossil carbon. But for pollutants, it can reduce hydrocarbon emissions up to 70% and particulate matter emissions up to 70%.
So then, biodiesel is certainly a good option to help reduce emissions, but I'm guessing there are some other benefits you'd like to tell us about as well.
Sure, there are definitely some other good properties to biodiesel, in addition to the ones that folks are concerned about. We usually just hear about the concerns, but there are some real benefits to biodiesel, one of which is cetane. Biodiesel does have a higher cetane minimum compared to petroleum diesel. So cetane minimum for biodiesel is 45, and most biodiesel is actually closer to 50 cetane, whereas the ASTM limit for diesel fuel is only 40. So higher cetane is an indicator of combustion quality, basically leads to a shorter ignition time, and ultimately we hope to better performance.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Dave. Cummins customers have always demanded improved performance, and our engines are tools to help to get the job done. The higher cetane, as you mentioned, from biodiesel brings that added performance desired by our customers.
I know that biodiesel has other performance benefits besides higher cetane. Can you add any additional insights?
Yeah, the next one I think I'd leave you with before we move on is lubricity. So in a modern diesel engine, all diesel engines actually, a lot of the lubricity and the moving parts comes from the fuel. New diesels are very clean burning, ultra-low sulfur diesel is very clean burning, but because of that, it actually is a little bit lower in lubricity than traditional diesel fuels. So lubricity additives are added to petroleum diesel and to renewable diesel. Well, the biodiesel molecule is actually a lubricity additive effectively. So the fuel itself provides the lubricity when you use biodiesel. So if you get above B2, you're going to see as good or better lubricity in your fuel than any additive package can provide with petroleum fuel or renewable diesel. So if we think about higher lubricity, meaning less wear on parts, including fuel pumps and cylinder walls, biodiesel is a great component in the fuel mix. It really helps ULSD and renewable diesel. Renewable diesel has even lower lubricity innately than ULSD. So it's a great way to add to your lubricity or even replace lubricity additives in conventional fuel. And the key thing to know with lubricity is it's actually measured by the amount of friction you get when you rub two pieces of metal together in the lubricity test. So rub the metal together and then look for a scar or a mark on the one piece of metal, so the wear scar. The smaller that wear scar, the better lubrication the fuel is providing, or in the case of additives, the additive is providing. So smaller wear scar, smaller number, better lubricity, less wear and tear on your engine parts. And that's where biodiesel really shines. It's the best lubricity option out there.
Yeah, Dave, what you mentioned about lubricity is a benefit that our engines take advantage of by using biodiesel. Engines need plenty of lubrication to run efficiently and prevent problems. And ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel itself, it is a poor lubricating fuel. Small amounts of added biodiesel enhance the lubricity of this fuel, managing to help the engine to run smoother, cooler, quieter, and improves durability.
So what I'm definitely hearing, in addition to improved emissions, is there's also better performance, there being key benefits to biodiesel. Is there anything else that you guys want to add to the list in terms of, the benefits of biodiesel?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I think the last, thing to keep in mind is we've talked about emissions and pollutants and also life cycle calculations, which is what people consider to be the overall life cycle carbon intensity of different options. And biodiesel really is a lower carbon fuel in all ways, not just from fossil carbon emissions from the tailpipe, but the life cycle carbon intensity is also very favorable. So we see reduced emissions for regulated emissions, such as criteria pollutants, but also in many jurisdictions and many customers have carbon intensity, life cycle carbon intensity reduction targets. So biodiesel can definitely help with that for you if you're doing the driving, or for your customers if they have carbon emissions targets that they wish you to report on. And of course, it could be a requirement. There could be requirements for both lower carbon operation and reduced pollutant operation in certain jurisdictions, most notably in California and Oregon with the LCFS and clean fuels programs.
That's a very great point, Dave. And our strategy at Cummins is focused on providing solutions to customers and the opportunity to decarbonize their businesses. Customers might not be ready to make the transition to some alternative energy sources, and biodiesel presents a great opportunity for these customers as it provides a sense of familiarity while still allowing for emission reductions.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Just something that is available for folks to use right now, right? Like you guys have mentioned with the infrastructure and the equipment that they have. So we are coming to the end of our podcast. I really want to thank you guys, Dave Slade and Ivan Iazdi, for helping us just get a better understanding of the benefits of biodiesel and how Chevron and Cummins can help provide lower carbon fuel solutions. So for those listening, if your organization is ready to explore ways to integrate biofuels into your operation, biodiesel is just one of the many options that's available to you. Chevron and Cummins want to partner with you to help you find the best path for lowering carbon emissions without intense investment in new equipment or infrastructure. And, biodiesel blends are a drop-in fuel and typically don't require vehicle or infrastructure upgrades. It's a really good option for people to use right now as they're continuing to build out their fleets and diversify their fleets for the future as well. Plus, as Ivan mentioned, Cummins has approved the use of blends up to B20 in most of their products all the way back to 2007, which makes biodiesel just a really good resource to help improve fleets' overall emissions output without having to make major investments. So why wait? Start running your tractor trailer or your work trucks on B20 today. So thank you guys again. Just really appreciate your time and your insights.